Welcome to the long-term recovery operations video. The length of recovery is influenced by the extent of the severity and scope of the event, extent of damage to infrastructure, impact on municipal and regional economies, and distress imposed on the population. Recovery operations may begin while some response operations are still underway. Demobilization of response operations begins as determined by the incident commander, IC, or unified commander, UC, and the Tooele County Emergency Management. The EOC and ESFs do not have a predetermined deadline to mobilize and can stay active for as long as needed. All jurisdictions maintain situational awareness of the incident and communicate with the EOC if any area of the response requires additional resources that could require the EOC or an ESF to remobilize. Once the EOC transitions to a full recovery operation, coordination of recovery efforts through ESF 14, long-term recovery, may begin. Transitioning from response to recovery operations is a change from immediate life-saving action to long-term community stabilization. When activated, the long-term recovery group manages, facilitates, and leads recovery operations and coordinates the development and implementation of a long-term recovery action plan. ESF 14 coordinates recovery through RSFs. RSFs encompass the core recovery capabilities, including those not active in emergency response, to focus on community recovery needs. The RSFs are organized into 7 core functions and can be activated to identify and resolve recovery challenges. The county's RSFs are as follows. RSF 1, Community Planning and Capacity Building. RSF 2, Economic Redevelopment. RSF 3, Health and Social Services. RSF 4, Housing. RSF 5, Infrastructure Systems. RSF 6, Natural and Cultural Resources. And RSF 7, Volunteer and Donations Management. County RSFs may consist of redeployed county staff from departments whose day-to-day operations and expertise can be applied during recovery operations. The transition from response to recovery operations may require agencies to transfer authority from ESF 14. Now let's talk about roles and responsibilities of recovery. We've already discussed the need for a disaster recovery policy group, a long-term disaster recovery leader, and a committee. But what do they do and who exactly is involved? Let's start with the policy group. The Disaster Recovery Policy Group supports incident response and recovery objectives by providing subject matter expertise and evaluating legal ramifications and recommending to the county leaders policies and/or practices to support disaster response and recovery operations. The group coordinates and shares information through briefings and situational reports with the county manager and council, EOC, and/or incident command. Depending on the type, scale, and severity of the incident, the Disaster and Recovery Policy Group may be assembled from the following or their designee. County Manager, appropriate elected and appointed officials, County Attorney, County Department Executive Staff or key staff as directed by the County Manager, potential community stakeholders and leaders and business leaders, Emergency Manager, and Long-Term Recovery Manager. Next, let's talk about the Long-Term Recovery Manager, LTRM. The Long-Term Recovery Manager does not have to be the same person for every disaster, but it is wise practice to make sure this person knows the community well and can involve the community, government, and partners of the community as the whole community works on recovery and rebuilding. This person is an integral part of the recovery process because it is this person that makes sure the process runs well, and is also a champion for the citizens of the community and also the community itself. The Long-Term Recovery Manager is assisted by the county manager or their designee. When selecting the recovery manager, consideration should be given to technical skills, expertise, and experience in similar types of disasters. It is best to utilize a community member who is a champion for the community and is not tied to government, as it helps the community have the identification that the government isn't controlling everything, and the community is having a voice in how the community recovers. The responsibilities of the long-term recovery manager are as follows and may include but are not limited to reports directly to the county manager and emergency manager, coordinates with the county manager and emergency manager in identification and selection of the long-term recovery committee, LTRC members, provides leadership and coordination for the long-term recovery committee. The LTRC shall report directly to the recovery manager, scheduling and facilitation of public meetings, coordination of multi-agency resource center and/or a disaster assistance center in coordination with appropriate county departments, state and federal agencies, and NGOs. In coordination with the EOC and county manager and disaster recovery committee, developing the long-term recovery strategy for the county and providing disaster budgetary and financial implications information to policymakers. Identification, activation of, and coordination with recovery support functions, RSFs, to support long-term recovery. Each RSF may develop a description of the key planning considerations and assumptions, as well as identification of the stakeholders and organizations that will have a role in implementing the specific function. Identification of and application for appropriate grants. Developing a public information strategy, ensuring that those impacted by the disaster maintain awareness of the different types of disaster assistance available and progress made throughout the recovery process, and initiating long-term recovery planning meetings with appropriate stakeholder agencies and the public. Ensuring all appropriate agencies are kept informed of long-term recovery actions and major events, and coordinating with the Utah State Division of Emergency Management, DEM, and FEMA to obtain political assistance funding as warranted, and coordinating with the county's finance, administration, and participating county agencies to ensure that reimbursement documents for FEMA's public assistance programs are consistent with FEMA's reimbursement guidelines. Coordinating emergency aid agreements with other involved jurisdictions as permitted by the county commissioners or their line of succession as dictated by county policy. Disaster recovery actions begin early on and have a cooperative relationship with first response actions. These short-term recovery efforts are coordinated by the Emergency Operations Center, or EOC. The EOC coordinates short-term recovery through emergency support functions, ESFs, while concurrently the long-term recovery manager coordinates the recovery support functions, RSFs, that may be activated. The EOC manager and long-term recovery manager should develop a plan to coordinate information. In time, the EOC is shut down and the remaining long-term recovery efforts function under the long-term recovery manager. Now, the long-term recovery committee, LTRC, is pretty much the recovery support functions, but that does not mean that others can't be involved. The stakeholders and champions and organizations within a community should be a part of the recovery support functions and should be leaders within their realm to create effective recovery mindsets, as well as forward-thinking mitigation opportunities. The long-term recovery committee leads shall be appointed by the plan, and the members shall be appointed by the consensus by the long-term recovery manager, county manager, and emergency manager. When selecting long-term recovery committee members, consideration should be given to type of disaster, subject matter expertise, local knowledge, and functional experience. LTRC selection should utilize the whole community approach, ensuring that all segments of the community are represented or have a voice in the recovery process. LTRC members and appointed subcommittees shall report directly to the recovery manager. Responsibilities of the long-term recovery committee will be disaster specific and may include but are not limited to considering the mid to long range physical, social, behavioral health, economic, environmental, and political impacts of the disaster. Coordinating the development and continual update of an impact and needs assessment. Identification and quantifying unmet needs of individuals and families should be coordinated with the appropriate RSFs. Determining funding priorities and making distribution recommendations to partner agencies and RSFs. So what is a recovery support function? Well, to answer that first, we have to show what an emergency support function is. These ESFs support the operations during response. The emergency support functions in the Tooele County EOC are ESF 1, Transportation; ESF 2, Communications; ESF 3, Public Works; ESF 4, Firefighting; ESF 5, Emergency Management; ESF 6, Mass Care, Housing and Human Services; ESF 7, Resource Management; ESF 8, Public Health and Medical Services; ESF 9, Search and Rescue; ESF 10, Hazardous Materials; ESF 11, Agricultural and Natural Resources; ESF 12, Energy; ESF 13, Law Enforcement; ESF 14, Long-Term Recovery; ESF 15, Public Information; ESF 16, Military Support; and ESF 17, Volunteer and Donations Management. Most all of these ESFs will be utilized during the short and immediate phases of recovery and coordinate during response if needed. The following are the most common ESFs activated to support short-term recovery. Please note, this is not a complete list of all of the ESFs. Tooele County Manager, ESF 14. Tooele County PIO, ESF 15. Tooele County Roads, Economic Development, Facilities and Waste Management Departments, ESF 1, 3, and 12. Tooele County Emergency Management, ESF 5, 7, Support 14 and 17. Tooele County Health Department, ESF 8, 8A, and 8B. Tooele County Health Department, ESF 6. Tooele County Finance Department, Support ESF 5, 7, and others. Tooele County GIS, Geographical Information Systems, Support ESF 5 and others. Tooele County Health Department, Support ESF 11. And Tooele County IT, Information Technology, ESF 12, and supports others. Now, recovery support functions are when ESF 14 starts moving toward the long-term phase and needs to focus on the long-term needs of the community and not just the response. Long-term recovery tends to be longer in duration, involves key players outside of the typical emergency responder community, and includes complexities not typically covered in traditional emergency support function ESF plans. To meet this broad range of challenges, recovery support functions, RSFs, are planning constructs that fill the gap and support the coordination of long-term recovery issues not previously covered. Depending on the type and scope of the disaster, RSFs are activated and coordinated by the long-term recovery manager. Each activated RSF is responsible for understanding federal and state documentation requirements for their activities. Each RSF is responsible for ensuring that all appropriate documents are archived. Each RSF has a designated lead agency that provides leadership, coordination, and oversight for that particular RSF. The lead agency for each activated RSF shall report directly to the recovery manager. Depending on the type of disaster, the lead agency for the RSF could be local, state, or federal. Lead agencies or organizations of the recovery support functions are RSF 1, Community Planning. The lead agency is Tooele County Manager's Office. RSF 2, Economic Redevelopment. The lead agency is Tooele County Chamber of Commerce. RSF 3, Health and Social Services. The lead agency is the Tooele County Health Department. RSF 4, Housing. The lead agency is the Tooele County Housing Authority. RSF 5, Infrastructure Systems. The lead agency is the Tooele County Community Development. RSF 6, Natural and Cultural Resources. The lead agency is Tooele County Parks and Recreation. RSF 7, Volunteer and Donations Management. Organizations active in disasters. The lead agency is Tooele County Emergency Management. The RSFs are comprised of different groups of agencies and organizations that will do similar work in recovery. These groups develop action plans and policies to address how recovery efforts may need to be focused, how recovery operations should proceed, and priorities within their functional areas. Once these plans and priorities have been established, RSF 1, along with the long-term recovery manager, will review plans across all functions and allocate resources and priorities across all RSFs to ensure consistency within the recovery effort. Each RSF has a coordinating agency with ongoing responsibilities throughout the preparedness, response, and recovery phases. The coordinating agency will ensure communication and coordination occurs for each RSF between coordinating and supporting agencies. The coordinating agency will identify recovery needs and coordinate activities and allocate resources. Coordinating agencies are not expected to have all the necessary assets, expertise, or capabilities internally. However, they are responsible for requesting, tasking, and coordinating the activities of supporting agencies to accomplish objectives. Each RSF includes supporting agencies. These agencies offer specific capabilities or resource available to support the coordinating agency in executing recovery agency objectives. Supporting agencies may provide information, advice, counsel, operational support, and coordination. The RSFs and associated groups are as follows. Recovery Support Function 1 is Disaster Recovery and Redevelopment Coordination and Planning. RSF 1 serves as the ICS equivalent of the Planning Section Chief. The Disaster Recovery and Redevelopment Coordination and Planning RSF coordinates public, private, and nonprofit efforts to establish recovery priorities, adjudicate resources, and ensure buy-in from local leadership. In collaboration with the long-term recovery manager, RSF 1 will review and identify strategies to achieve community recovery objectives in the Recovery Action Plan. RSF 1 will coordinate the resources and priorities of RSF 2 through RSF 7 to facilitate tactical recovery operations and ensure consistency with the Tooele County Recovery Plan. Additionally, RSF 1 supports the development of local community recovery action plans. The Recovery Action Plan will outline goals, objectives, tactics, authorities, and programs that can be leveraged to execute strategies following the disaster. Recovery Support Function 2 is Economic Redevelopment. The Economic Redevelopment RSF coordinates the public, private, and nonprofit efforts to develop and implement programs to sustain, rebuild, and promote business and economic opportunities, resulting in an economically resilient county. This includes coordinating the local efforts with the state of Utah and relevant federal agencies. They integrate the expertise of partners within the community to help local governments and the private sector sustain and/or rebuild businesses and employment, and they develop economic opportunities that result in sustainable and economically resilient communities. Recovery Support Function 3 is Health and Social Services. The Health and Social Services RSF coordinates the public, private, and nonprofit efforts to implement programs and policies ensuring adequate delivery of public health, social, education, and human services to individuals and households impacted by disasters. Recovery involves collaboration with emergency management and other community partners and to develop efficient processes and advocate for the rebuilding of public health, medical, mental behavioral, educational, and other social service systems to a level of functioning comparable to pre-incident levels and improved levels where possible. In some cases, this may include providing services to individuals and households from neighboring jurisdictions displaced to Tooele County. Recovery Support Function 4 is Community Development, Planning, and Housing. The Community Development, Planning, and Housing Recovery Support Function coordinates the public, private, and nonprofit efforts to develop and implement programs and policies promoting, incentivizing, or directly providing for rehabilitation and reconstruction of destroyed and damaged housing, and/or the development of new permanent housing options while adhering to applicable housing laws and regulations. RSF 4 is also responsible for coordinating sheltering efforts during recovery. For both sheltering and housing efforts, this includes coordinating efforts with the state of Utah and relevant federal agencies. Recovery Support Function 5 is Infrastructure Systems. The Infrastructure Systems RSF coordinates the public, private, and nonprofit efforts to maintain and restore critical facilities, infrastructure systems, and related services. In the context of the disaster recovery plan, infrastructure systems refer to utilities, transportation, privately owned telecommunications and other communications, and debris management. This includes coordinating efforts with the state of Utah, relevant federal agencies, and key private sector partners. Recovery Support Function 6 is Natural and Cultural Resources. The Natural and Cultural Resources RSF coordinates the public, private, and nonprofit sector efforts to address long-term environmental and cultural resource recovery needs after large-scale incidents. This includes coordinating efforts with the state of Utah, relevant federal agencies, and key private sector partners. Recovery Support Function 7, Organizations active in disasters, volunteer, and donations management. Coordinates the delivery of scalable recovery assistance by community organizations, non-governmental partners, and the private sector following disasters having a long-term impact to jurisdictions and populations. And it coordinates management of donations and spontaneous and trained volunteers for the recovery efforts in Tooele County. FEMA has developed a construct for objectives-based response that prioritizes the rapid stabilization of community lifelines after a disaster. Lifelines are the most fundamental services in the community that, when stabilized, enable all other aspects of society to function. The integrated network of assets, services, and capabilities that provide lifeline services are used day to day to support the recurring needs of the community and enable all other aspects of society to function. The lifelines are safety and security, food, water, shelter, health and medical, energy, communication, transportation, and hazardous materials. You will see that we have made a table with the appropriate RSF and lifelines, along with some of the activities that happen within the recovery support function. This table can be found in the Tooele County Disaster Recovery Plan and as a PDF on TCEM under Recovery. Every county department and agency and organization identified in this plan should develop and maintain internal processes and procedures needed to fulfill their roles and responsibilities as identified within. Specifically, those that involve human resources, purchasing, and finance to determine if those processes and procedures should be amended to meet the needs of the emergency and ensuing recovery process. All Tooele County departments are responsible for understanding their department's roles and responsibilities identified within the Disaster Recovery Plan and the SEMP and COOP, and supporting annexes, plans, and assigning personnel to perform those functions. Developing and maintaining internal procedures, agreements, and staffing patterns needed to meet their specific roles and responsibilities identified in the Disaster Recovery Plan and its supporting annexes and plans. Considering access and functional needs, AFN, issues so that recovery efforts support the needs of people with any type of access or functional need. When appropriate, providing a representative to the Emergency Operations Center, EOC, to support or to coordinate their assigned emergency support function, ESF. Keeping the long-term recovery manager and EOC updated with key information relating to the recovery of the emergency or disaster situation. In conjunction with the lead public information officer, providing area expertise needed to support emergency public information. Providing personnel to attend EOC team meetings, trainings, and exercises as appropriate, and identifying and executing opportunities to collaborate with other departments to achieve enhanced recovery and long-term resilience outcomes. Maintaining records for all disaster emergency-related expenses and submitting them to the Finance Department for tracking and disaster cost recovery, and maintaining all incident-related documents and correspondence. The private sector also plays a vital role in establishing public confidence immediately after a disaster. When the private sector is operational, the community recovers more quickly by retaining and providing jobs and a stable tax base. If local leadership and the business community work together, pre-disaster and develop a conceptual recovery plan, the public is more likely to be optimistic about the community's ability to recover post-disaster. Additionally, the private sector owns and operates the vast majority of critical infrastructure, such as hospitals, electric power, financial and telecommunications systems. These entities play a major role in the recovery of a community or a region as a whole. As major players in recovery efforts, businesses and critical infrastructure owners and operators have an important responsibility to improve disaster resilience by mitigating risks and increasing disaster preparedness. It is critical for disaster recovery officials to recognize the importance of partnership and create coordination opportunities during pre-disaster planning with private sector leaders. Businesses should adopt and exercise business continuity plans to minimize costly operational disruptions and purchase adequate all hazards insurance policies. Businesses with a plan for disruption are less likely to go out of business after a disaster than those without a plan. For more details about department, agency, organization, and public sector responsibilities, refer to the Disaster Recovery Plan. Before we talk about recommendations and best practices, let's talk a bit about finance. That is always the big question of every disaster and recovery. Who is going to pay for what? And the question is answered, well, it depends on how severe the disaster is, who is involved, what resources are available, and how a community will go about obtaining the finances to recover. There are no hard, fast answers to this question, but there are different options, and there are different avenues of obtaining money, equipment, resources, and people for what is needed. It is the very best practice for each jurisdiction to study what financial options are available locally and through mutual aid, through grant funding, partners, and through FEMA declarations and public assistance from the federal government. These do not always happen every disaster. Therefore, it is imperative that the proper leaders research how they are obtained and have someone who is knowledgeable in the finance department who can handle the myriad of available avenues of disaster financial assistance, not just for the government needs, but for the community and its citizens, and especially those impacted the hardest. This is one of the best practices, which moves us into the recommendations and best practices for recovery. As stated before, it is best practice to involve the community. In other disaster incidents that have happened in other parts of the country, those that have reached out to champions of the community have excelled in the recovery process. When people feel empowered to improve their community and help others, they are more likely to do the work needed to help the community recover more resolutely and build it with mitigation and preparedness for future disasters in mind. The next recommendation of a best practice is to begin on recovery efforts before a disaster starts. Reach out to businesses that help the community thrive and help them to be prepared to weather whatever disaster, whether man-made or natural, so that they can get back to business quickly. When businesses get opened again as quickly as possible, a community can get moving forward quicker to recovery. Another best practice recommendation is to develop good communication strategies beforehand with the community and the smaller communities within the community. The opportunities to communicate with those little audiences are a key on understanding the needs of what recovery may look like and how the processes may be motivated. Communication in disaster always fails in many different ways, but if there are communication efforts beforehand, people will learn what is reliable and what is not, and will seek out the best communication modes to help them feel like they are getting the best answers for their welfare and well-being. Being proactive in communication and preparation is one of the key elements in effective recovery because people will have the knowledge and skills to be resilient for themselves and to help others. The last recommendation that we will mention is to highlight what capacities and strengths are right in your own communities. Build and gather what people and resources you know and have meetings beforehand to garner the community building that will be needed in recovery. Reach out to partners, both private and non-profit, and ask them questions about how they might be able to help your community in recovery. Invite them to planning meetings and exercises. Invite community members. They might have other ideas that may not have been thought of. A community was not built in a day. A community is built on collaborative efforts of people who feel like they have ownership and a stake in how the future is going to look for that community. It is wise practice to harness the energy of that power toward recovery and make the connections way before they are ever needed. One more thing that needs to be addressed, and that is documentation. In all disasters, the need for documentation is so critical it cannot be overstated. All that happens should be documented, and all the time spent should be documented. FEMA and the EOC have forms and templates to help with documentation, so it is easier to remember what all should be documented. There are also templates to utilize with planning before and during recoveries happening. Not every disaster or major emergency will be declared a federal disaster, but if you treat it like it is and keep track of all that needs to be kept track of, like a big federally declared disaster, a community will be better off. Sometimes a community can tack on to another community within an area, and then together it may become a federally declared disaster. The paperwork of what needs to be submitted will already be done if you think in terms of it being a large federally declared disaster, and everything needs to be documented. Everything. From lessons from other disasters, people who have experienced a disaster will say, "You will be glad you did." There is an actual disaster recovery plan with a lot more detail that you can read. This video was just to let you know the high-level basics of the disaster recovery plan. It is encouraged that you read the entire plan and familiarize yourself with what is in it, especially what your department, agency, organization, or business need to be prepared to do and know. It can be found by contacting the EOC.